So, Phil, we're recording something in advance of the U.S. Open Cup semifinal game between Austin and Minnesota. And we kicked back and forth. Do we record something? Do we wait until later in the week? I guess we're recording something that in a few hours might end up being either irrelevant or incredibly prescient. But one way or another, whether it's a few hours from now or a few hours from now, plus a few more hours from now, because of what looks like incoming weather in Minnesota, look, we've already hit record. We're recording it.
Yeah, and I mean, I was on a plane earlier today. I'm on mountain time right now. Does that make a difference in what we're doing here?
I don't know. Does anything matter at this point? I guess we'll know later tonight.
Right, but I guess the real emergency would have been not doing this.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hurry yeah, shut up, hurry yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. And clearly, one is upon us tonight, a chance to host the U.S. Open Cup final. All they have to do is beat Minnesota, a team that they have not beat this year so far. They played two times in May. One was a loss that we probably don't want to talk too much about, and one was a 1-1 draw at Alliance Field in St. Paul, which is where this is going to be taking place. Steps, of course, from the legendary Blackheart. We know that there are a lot of Austin fans who may be pre-gaming and post-gaming there. So salutes to you who made the trip out there. And Moises, how are you feeling just hours before the kickoff if the weather cooperates, and then some other hours later if it does not?
It's a historic night in club history, which has been noted, and I'll continue noting. And I feel like it's got all the makings of something particularly interesting and special. Now that we know that Nashville is going to be the Eastern Conference side of the final equation, it feels to me like whatever happens in Minnesota, the players know how much is on the line. This is a major centerpiece to their season and what they feel like they can do to show the fans, show the rest of the league, show their opponents what they're made of. And they have shown to me so much of the character and story of the season in this Open Cup run, even though it is so many fewer games than the MLS regular season. The story of Austin in 2025 is encapsulated in this Open Cup run. It may be unpopular when I say it, but to me, the Open Cup is a more interesting and meaningful competition and journey than MLS Cup in a lot of ways, because it is such a struggle cup. Major League Struggle Cup is to me what MLS Cup is. It has its own curse to it because of the roster rule salary cap league that it is. I think that if there is a significant weather delay, that presents yet more of an opportunity for absolute scenes, things that people don't expect to see happen. And I think that expecting the unexpected is the watchword for the night.
I also think that Austin Nashville would be a better narrative for the
Big
final
time.
than
So
Minnesota
much.
Nashville. Nashville, of course, as you remember, was in the Western Conference at one time. They were pinging back and forth. You had that MVP race in 22. A lot of good matches between them over the years. Bukari's best goal still probably came against Nashville.
Yeah.
I believe that was his first MLS goal. Yeah, that happened late last year. Kind of a weird game. That featured a Stuver penalty save too, which was pretty interesting on Mukhtar. Mukhtar obviously still with the team. Sam Surridge got a hat trick yesterday. He looked pretty formidable. Quinn Sullivan did have a banger in that game that brought them back, but then Surridge had a pretty fantastic trick goal of his own to put that game away. So yeah, let's go ahead. I want to talk. We're going to make this a pretty quick one, but we did want to just give you a little bit of insight, hopefully, as we prepare for this game. And
And
obviously, this is going to pop up in your feed and something to listen to either before the game or during a inadvertent
yeah.
weather delay.
That's if this is your emergency break glass weather delay podcast, hey, we've done our jobs. Phil, I rewatched the Minnesota San Diego replay from their most recent
Mm,
match, their most recent
okay.
win. Before we get into that, I'm interested in the analysis that you've done. Why is it that Soccer Wise thinks this is so open and shut for the Loons?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I did a little listening while I was waiting for my hotel room to be cleaned. So I'm in El Paso, by the way. So I got called away last minute to a work conference trip. So I am here in Mountain Time. I am here at some level of elevation above what Austin is at. And yeah, so I had the opportunity to walk around downtown El Paso and listen to David Goss and Ben Wright talk about the matchups that are going to be happening. And they basically think that Minnesota, their style of play, their ability to let the other team have the ball, what the center backs do, what Dane St. Clair does, what finishers like Pereira and Lode can do. They thought that everything tipped pretty much Minnesota's way. They were pretty critical, as we were, of course, of Austin's recent loss against Dallas. They did compliment Owen Wolf in part because Goss did pick up Owen Wolf for his best ball team that we play in the Verde League, where you have to have at least one Austin FC player. He had Dessler swapped out for Wolf. He's feeling pretty good with that. And again, we'll get a little bit more into the offensive contributions in a bit here, but yeah, just wanted to share that insight that among national pundits that do watch quite a bit of soccer, that know quite a bit of soccer, they're not really counting on Austin to do things here. Again, that game was weird, as we mentioned. Wazuni did not start that match. Dessler did not start that match. Those are pretty big difference makers. When you had Obrion out there doing the level of play that he did in that match, not being subbed off when perhaps he should have been. That certainly, again, portends for there was some rotation that Austin brought into that lineup. They did recognize that as well, but just again, the kind of national punditry on Austin at the moment is a little bit, I think, less optimistic than we're still maintaining. I know that Matthew Doyle in his power rankings this week for the Austin FC entry just said fart noise. And understandable. It's not a good performance against Dallas. But again, this is just maybe, again, hopefully more motivation for the Austin players to see that, to break out those keep doubting us banners and bring that energy back.
Yeah, the week to week hot take fest, that's what some of these guys do. That's their bread and butter. And that's just the way that they follow the league overall. And that's where team specific outlets like ours, to
Mhm.
me, give a deeper, more nuanced perspective. Fart noise does not take into account that the most recent game and the match before it and the match before that,
Mhm.
roster, team sheet based decisions, subs, all of that, we were told was taken in consideration to the fact that they had a cup semifinal that they were heading toward, which,
Right.
there are those who would say, oh no, how dare you not put the best 11 and the best 20 out that you can every single league game. Do you do that at the expense of a an already historic Open Cup run that could lead to the club's first ever hardware?
Right,
Um,
especially with Dessler nursing an injury. The last two matches before this one, they were wins. They looked good. We were pretty pleased with what they were doing. We are buffeted by the wins of what happens match by match, by the way. But yeah, I do
yeah,
think that those of us in the Austin media community do keep perspective on what the team is doing, that there is this narrative unfolding throughout the season. And again, yeah, is it the absolute best team that it could possibly be given roster rules and the kind of constraints that happen there? No. Is it a team that is achieving pretty well for what it's brought in, what it's dealt with its main DP, as Rodolfo Perel called him, blowing out his knee in the middle of the season during an Open Cup game, by the way, the last one that Austin played, which seems like eons ago, but was really not all that long ago.
there are always those comments about how, oh, John Gallagher is not the best player on the planet. Why is he playing all these minutes? Because he is the best player on the planet that they have on the roster to do the various jobs that they need a John Gallagher to do. Oh, he
Which
looks
is
tired. Well, it's he splits games playing offense and defense and has
mhm,
played, I would say, more stamina draining minutes than anybody on the in the club other than Owen Wolf.
absolutely. Yep, for sure.
There are a lot of those kinds of considerations to take into account. And frankly, I would take a disappointing loss with a weird jacked up roster right before a cup semifinal than going super hard the match right before a cup semifinal and leaving
Mhm.
yourselves depleted in the interest of winning one game.
Right. The Copa Tejas second place decider,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is not a big deal at all
If
if you
if
put it in
Copa
that way, right?
look, if Copa Tejas itself had actually been on the line, I think that it would be reasonable for expectations to be set a little bit differently. But it wasn't. And
Yeah,
was it
but
another disappointing away loss at Dallas? Yeah, and that does other things for morale. And I think that the thing that clubs got to do that they may not want to hear is that they've got to do a little bit more work directly calibrating fan expectations, not just telling us stuff in press conferences and other conversations, but they need to directly engage with their fan base if
Mhm,
the concern is that expectations are radically out of alignment with what's real. There's only
mhm.
so much that is going to get believed coming out of our mouths, even as critical as we have been in so many ways, because, oh, well, you guys are just repeating the line that the club wants to tell you. Okay, if the fans don't believe us, guys, you talk to them, be my guest.
All right, let's talk about these 18 players that are coming. Of course, as you know, with opening up rules, or if you don't, you were about to know this. Rather than putting 20 on the roster, you can only put 18 on the roster. And Austin pointedly, with their social media, put out 18 people, and fans have risen to the occasion and have picked out which 18 are coming. And we know that it looks based on that, unless they just did a little switcheroo type thing and brought in maybe some extra players just to make the trip. It looks like we know who the 18 are, and it looks like Hodder O'Brien and Robert Taylor are not going to be two of those 18 players.
So leaving O'Brien and Taylor at home, I don't think is going to necessarily make anybody terribly sad for those who have
Nope,
been actively watching the team the last few weeks, especially
nope,
the
nope.
way that things went in Dallas. But the 18 that we have seen on social media that definitely made the plane: Stefan Cleveland, the backup goalkeeper, Brendan
Mhm.
Heinzeich, Buka, Cascante, Bidu, Jean Kolmanich, John Gallagher, CJ Fodre, Owen Wolf, Stuver, Djordjevic, Sabovic, Uzuni, Donny Pereira, Diego Rubio, Alexander Svatok, Mikel Dessler, and finally, Captain Ilie Sanchez.
Yeah. So does anybody surprise you on that list?
No, I don't know that Julio Cascante is going to see any minutes in any permutation of how this game rolls out. He hasn't gotten any competitive minutes in a while. Of everybody on there, like that is, I didn't do the math in advance of this, but CJ Fodre might have more competitive minutes in the last 3 months than Julio Cascante. In fact, he probably does.
Yeah, I think he does. CJ surprises me a little bit here. The only case that you would really be able to make, I think, for Taylor in this is just that he does have some experience in this tournament. I believe he was on the squad that ended up losing to Houston. Taylor just brings a little bit more experience with him. Obrian does too, but given Fodry's performance in the SKC match, I think that maybe part of the equation is just that he is on a little bit of a heater, and then also just that there's not a lot of striker depth on this team either. So again, the thing
No,
is that this could go 120 minutes plus PKs. If it's tied at the end of 90, then they have to go another 30. So part of that is that you have to game for that as well. And probably the reason that you have Cascante and Djordjevic coming on is that, again, center backs are going to be pretty important. So if there's like a red card situation, if there's just fatigue, if there's an injury, then you're going to want to
mm-hmm.
make sure that you've got the choice, right? I don't expect that all four center backs are going to see minutes, but it could happen.
They
These
might.
games get weird. You never
Yeah.
know. And maybe Cascante can play striker. No, I'm just kind of kidding. But if they do need to push, I mean, if they do need to make a switch that is kind of more offensive minded, it is a little bit of a gamble, but it might come in handy to get Cascante in a match late if they are needing that push, if they are needing somebody who can do more progressive passing and can activate the offense. If there's
Yeah.
a time for G plus, which I know is a pretty maligned stat lately in some of the circles that I've been running in, it's still, again, goals added. It's still a opportunity to see how players affect us, particularly that offensive portion of the game. And Cascante traditionally does well with those kind of numbers based on his style of play and based on his ability, even though obviously we're not seeing as much of him as we once were.
Yeah, I think that there's something to the redemption narrative for Cascante's tenure at the club if we get to see minutes from him tonight or in the theoretical final. I've been down on him at different points, but overall, I know that the guy has given a lot of his heart to the city, to the club, and nothing would make me happier for him than him having some sort of major figuring in an Open Cup final, an Open Cup win at the end of the day. I think that's one of the little sub narratives that I think would be nice to see from them, favoring the fact that, look, they've got to favor him over also having O'Brien or also having Taylor on the roster.
Speaking of Taylor, I did a quick look up here. He did, in fact, play the first half of that 2023 Open Cup final for Miami, and of course, as you know, Houston did win that game. So, I
So
mean,
yeah,
he's got Open Cup final experience, but he's also got Open Cup final losing experience. So, but who knows? Maybe CJ's just along for the ride, and Taylor's going to be like the surprise secret weapon. But I don't think so. I think we probably know the 18 that we're going to have, and soon after this goes up, you'll be able to check that for
we'll
yourself when
know.
you look at the lineup.
I wanted to dig into the other side of things, to flip things over on the Minnesota side of things. Minnesota, who beat San Diego 3-1 just a few days ago, using 9 of their 11 standard starters, which, if you are fighting for supporter shield, if you're fighting for playoff seeding placement, okay, I can definitely understand pushing for that in advance of an Open Cup semifinal.
Yeah.
I don't know that it sets them up on the best foot forward, on the invincible kind of foot that it seems that Soccer Wise and other people have them on. A couple of things that happened in that match at around, let's see, I didn't even note the time, but Dane St. Clair was down for a solid 5 minutes, favoring his right leg.
Ew.
And there was no reason for them to, gamesmanship wise, be trying to slow down the game at the time that this happened. And it was the kind of thing that made me wonder why there was only 3 minutes of first half stoppage time, because there was clearly more than 3 minutes that play was completely stopped, ground to a halt. Maybe they included a hydration break as part of it, but that's something that, especially if this goes 120, if Dane St. Clair's right leg is not in the absolute best shape that it could be, and Austin makes him work, that could be something. Another thing, as noted by the commentary team, Rosales did not have much of a night. He was basically not on the field. And if he is similarly not in exactly the best fighting form and is out in space, another thing that Austin can exploit. They brought in subs at around 63. The game was theirs pretty much, but how much did they really rest these guys? And how complacent might some of Eric Ramsey's guys be going into this, thinking, well, it's just Austin. Look what we did to them. Even though the second game was a draw, it was still a heavily Minnesota-controlled match. I think that them feeling like they are coming at this from a position of strength, of don't they know who we are, and knowing that they have maybe 9,000 tickets sold for that big stadium at Allianz, that to me that's got me taking the same side as Charlie Davies did on CBS's air last night, who, as they were going off the air with Nashville Philly, said that on paper you might want to say Minnesota's got this in a walk, but I think Austin wins this. And to me, it's not just that I think Austin wants it more, which I do think that they do, which isn't to say that Minnesota doesn't, but Austin really, really, really wants this a lot more. Yeah. Combined with the fact that I think they are maybe in a little bit of the complacent headspace that Nico Estevez, that Brendan Hines-Ike mentioned, Austin has bizarrely gotten into after they get 2 wins in a row. I feel like coming fresh off of a road win against San Diego, I think we could reasonably suspect there is a fair amount of overconfidence in the Loons' heads.
Yeah, and it's also a weird kind of game in that if you just see Minnesota 3, San Diego 1, you look at the scoreline, it's like, okay, Minnesota dominated this game on the road. But if you dig into the numbers a little bit, San Diego dominates XG. And again, I know, problematic, but 2.41 to 0.8 8-1, right? Momentum chart, and this is from Catalina Bush and MLS Stats, the blue sky that she puts up. Lots of momentum for San Diego. Like Minnesota, all the goals came late, but Minnesota gets up to a 2-goal lead in like the one kind of little 10-minute pocket in which they have any momentum at all. The
Yeah.
rest of it is San Diego momentum. Shots, San Diego won that 28-6. Shots on target, 20-5. And then San Diego's only goal came on 1 out of 20 poor attempts. So they were shooting from distance for a lot of that.
Those 2 goals in 10 minutes, watching it, it was, and this is the biggest thing that Austin has to be ready for. And based on what they've said to us, it feels like they are preparing for, which is that Minnesota got lucky on the counter. And that is where they're the most dangerous. They are
Yep.
an incredibly dangerous counterattacking team. And I would be shocked if Austin were not prepared for it. Preparing for it is one thing, though. Actually showing up and doing the job and being awake and alert and ready and focused on it and not letting, say, one goal cause you to crumble. That's unfortunately been the kryptonite for a lot of unfortunate losses that could have been wins throughout Austin's season.
Yeah. And again, yeah, so obviously, yeah, on that defensive front, that transition defense, like you just said, I think is going to be crucial. And then offense, Brendan Heinzike was talking on Monday about isolating the wingbacks and that being really important too, and getting into those kind of situations. And they've done that pretty well when they played teams with 5 in the back throughout the season. He pointed out that they did not do that well against Dallas, and that's certainly something that is concerning. And again, yeah, that was a little kind of confounding to certainly the MLS folks that thought that they were running a 4-back line. They have some players that are traditionally more forwards that are playing in those wing-back roles. So be interesting to see. Again, Minnesota will probably come out in that back five. That's the expectation. But
Yeah.
will they really be able to isolate those wingbacks and focus on that? Because I do think that Minnesota's overall defense and their wingback defense is probably better than Dallas's. And again, just a fluky word game, perhaps. Again, it and this was the first question out of my mouth in the post-match press conference to Nico was, well, I thought this Montreal match was an aberration. And then a few weeks later, we're seeing the same thing with Dallas. So, but it looks like at this point in the season, it looks like maybe they have a clunker like this every 3 or 4 games. My hope is that they've gotten this out of the way and that they don't have another one of these until they can maybe stand to have a clunker of a match and maybe still pull it out, which is looking at you, home match against St. Louis.
Against St. Louis. St. Louis, who have nothing to lose. When we get back well, yeah. When we get back together later in the week, I do want to circle back to my Austin's remaining opponents and what they're facing and update on that front as I kept a very keen eye on the Miami Seattle match that happened last night, which was very interesting from a variety of perspectives. We'll talk again later in the week before Sunday Night Soccer for the second time in roughly a month's time.
Yeah, and a rare home match these days. So I've not been in the stadium in a while, so it'll be nice to get back there. Anything else on this match? Oh, we want to talk about keys to winning. What do we think it's going to take for Austin to pull this off?
For me, it's got to be locked in from minute one. I want to see them not focus on dominating possession, as we saw was the downfall of the first match this season against Minnesota. But I want to see them focus on dominating the press in the first 5 minutes of the match. I want to see them put Minnesota on their back heels. I want to see them do whatever it is they have to get that early goal and make Minnesota have to show up and make Minnesota have to worry about something that I think going into this match, Minnesota is not worried about going down a goal early in the match. And if they can do that, that will set the tenor for the match in a way that neither of the previous matches this year have gone, and that will make Eric Ramsey's guys have to very radically try to refocus and figure out what it is they're doing. And that's when Minnesota makes dumb mistakes.
Right, because Austin will get the ball too. Minnesota will let Austin get the ball. And we have seen them come out in games in recent weeks where this didn't happen against Dallas, obviously, but against SKC the week before, you saw them coming out and you saw them being attacking from minute one. You saw them creating chances. You saw them pushing tempo and looked really good when they did that. So yeah, hopefully they've got that within them and they do that. Do you have any other keys? Because I have 2 that I'm looking at and I'm wondering if we maybe overlap a little bit.
Tactically, I think the crazy thing would be trying to bunker from the front, Don't focus on fancy crosses. Don't focus on long balls. Focus on just maintaining possession while you have possession. Make their wingbacks work too hard. Make their center backs work too hard. Make their midfielders run out of gas early on. And then, especially if they have to go to 120, you're going to have lots of Minnesota players who are out of gas, and there are only so many substitutions that can be made.
Right. Yeah. And for me, we talked at the start of the season about the UVB front line, right? Wazuni, Vasquez, Bukri. Obviously, Vasquez is rehabbing at this point right now, but I'm thinking kind of a UWB approach, right? So I'm expecting that maybe Rubio will get the start at center forward. That seems like that would probably make the most sense given who's available and where they've been best. But having Wolf in the mix there as a catalyst, as he's been really good and doing in recent weeks. And we've seen Azuni and Wolf scoring a lot of their goals, the majority of their goals, the vast majority of their goals in their last 6, 7 matches each. And then, of course, Bukri has been doing goal contributions. So to have those three contributing is, I think, going to be key, right? So again, those are the best three offensive players that this team has right now. And they need to show up, especially against the level of defense that they're going to play against. And then it's just, again, it's a match of all-star goalkeepers. So you've got Stuver on one side, you've got St. Clair on the other. This is a chance for Stu to show that the selection to the squad was no fluke, that this was not home cooking, that he really deserves to be there. I mean, I think he's getting his accolades, he's getting his flowers this year, and I think that that's really good. But this is an opportunity. He's going head-to-head against another all-star goalkeeper, and he's going to be relied on, I'm sure, at some points to make some fantastic saves. We've seen it again in recent weeks. He's capable of that. This is a chance to do that on this, again, weird spotlight, because again, on one hand, we think Open Cup semifinals is really amazing. I mean, this is the penultimate game before trophy gets awarded, so it's big. But Open Cup also occupies this kind of weird hidden space, and you don't have as many fans coming out to the matches as you do for regular season games. So it's in its kind of own weird little bubble. But I do consider this kind of a showcase. I do consider that there is going to be a spotlight on them just because of the level of play. And if Stuver is the hero, then that's going to expand his lore heading into a final, which I do think people would enjoy an Austin Nashville final heartily, maybe more so than a Minnesota Nashville final.
I
And
completely
I would
agree.
certainly enjoy. I would certainly enjoy an Austin Nashville final more.
Yeah, I think there's in talking about lineup likelihood, mentioning assuming that Rubio will start. The other thing that I've had in the back of my head is maybe there is something real surprising that we see in that lineup, and instead of Rubio starting, as we saw him start in the most previous match, CJ Fodre starts because they know he can go 120, and they bring Diego Rubio on later to do the gamesmanship job that he's capable of doing. I'm not saying it's likely.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's likely.
Okay.
And I know that you want to argue with it, but I'm saying maybe there is something like that in the mix that is designed to put Ramsey's tactics on the back heel. Something different than the way that they have lined up against this team in the past. I wouldn't put it out of the likelihood of happening, but I could see something really surprising a lot of people. This is a great opportunity, not just for Stuver, but for a lot of these players, many of them who are on options, who are going out of contract, who are theoretically being dealt elsewhere, to show up big on a very prominent stage in the world of U.S. soccer. And to me, knowing the roster rule complications of being an MLS club, there are a lot of limits in terms of money that people can get paid. But Nico Dubrasarski on $700K, yes, he's under the magical U22 umbrella when it comes to the cap. But you got a lot of players that have been digging down really deep this entire season.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity for them to show everything that they are worth, every dollar more than what they are paid, that they are worth being paid, whether they end up being dealt to another team or whether they are in the conversation for a contract renewal at Austin. The limits of the salary cap are what the limits of the salary cap are. But if you want these guys to have their minds in the game and not, how am I going to get myself dealt to USL or somewhere else for better money or whatever it is, this is the time that these players get to show what it is that their agents have to negotiate with going into
Right.
this.
I do want to circle back for a second on the Rubio versus Fodry
Mhm.
thing. So I do like where you're going. I like where your head's at. What I do expect, though, is that I do expect Rubio to start because I think they're going to need his poop housing from minute one. I think he's going to try
Mhm.
to work the
Yeah,
refs,
I agree.
agitate some of the players who could be agitated. And then I think Fodry comes on maybe minute 75, can go up to 120 if he needs to. Again, just that kind of that energy jolt that the team might need at that particular point. But again, that is probably what Ramsey is expecting. So if
Mhm.
they do a
Invert
flip on
that.
that, then you lose the poop housing. So
Exactly.
you don't get that until later. And I think that
Yeah.
that might be something Owen can do it to a certain degree, but
Yeah.
you don't want to risk him getting a yellow. Danny just can't do it. He might do something dumb and get a yellow anyway, but we
Yeah.
love him. But yeah, I mean, it's a thing that he does, and I could see. But that's going to be a wild card too, because again, it's 120 minutes. It's an extra 30 minutes to get a second yellow.
Yeah, I like that unlike other teams that Austin could be in this against, like
Mhm.
Dallas, for example, that I would
Yep.
be concerned about goading or ungentlemanly conduct or something like that. I feel like this ought to, at the very least, be a relatively respectful matchup of teams that at least they may not like each other on the field, but they at least respect each other and
Mhm.
are
Yep.
not into some of the dark arts elements of the game. That is, Eric Ramsey is not telling his guys to go and literally legitimately try to hurt Austin players. And the same
Right.
thing coming from Nico's side toward
Right.
Minnesota players.
But
That's
this
one of
team does have Rosales and it does have Boxall.
it sure does. It sure does.
So,
And
so there is that.
yeah, you never know what kind of a mood you get them in. And here's the thing is if they get under Boxall and Rosales' skin, that's a good place to be.
Yeah.
You want them acting out, you want them frustrated. And
Yeah.
that to me is the big thing. They've got to accomplish that however they do it.
Yeah. And Boxall's nearly unflappable, but Rosales, as we know from his history, is not.
Cup semifinal,
Yep.
you know, get Boxall grumpy.
Okay.
I think
All
it's
right.
doable. I think it's doable.
um, anything else? We got to edit this
Yeah, we're good.
momentarily.
I think this is it, and we'll be back later this week.
Okay. Enjoy the game. It's going to be great. I hope.
This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.